What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing roughly the same. That's what sources are saying. Sources are saying he's not really doing anything. Glorified house husband is the thing. But I also think we need to look at it also at face value. What is he doing? Okay, he's working behind the scenes on the Invictus Games. That's obviously a long-term project that he's had before he stepped away as a working member of the royal family, and before he moved over to California. But when it comes to what he's been doing, they obviously, the couple, the Sussexes, signed this huge big money Netflix deal, 5-year deal in 2020 that's now been completely downgraded to a first look deal. Then came Spare, that book in his memoir in 2023. Again, a trashathon of the royal family.
Mm-hmm.
After, of course, the Harry and Meghan documentary that they produced and starred in on Netflix. I say documentary; it was more of a kind of docu-reality series. But that's the thing. Here's Meghan now, and when it comes to at the Sundance Film Festival, although Prince Harry was listed as an executive producer and he was there smiling for pictures and greeting some of the people in the film, he wasn't doing much interviews. No, Meghan was the one who was actually promoting the project, bless her. And then also Meghan at the moment, she's the one doing the With Love Meghan series. She's the one trying to flog her jam and her brands and her cookies and her flour sprinkles and honeys and jams and everything else that she's doing in as ever. I mean, listen, I know I say it like that, but listen, at least she's actually doing something. When we're looking at Harry, we have to look at it. What's he doing? What big public venture is he doing? What philanthropic endeavor is he going to next, apart from these quasi-royal tours with Meghan, strutting across the world on quasi visits, which aren't even doing anything. They're not proper state visits. They're not organized through the royal family. And that's what you've got to ask yourself. You've got to look, what is he actually doing? Not much is the answer. And bearing in mind, they have massive overheads. They have to pay, it's estimated $2 to $3 million a year for their private security. They've got a huge mortgage payment, up to estimates are saying $10 million on their big Montecito mansion. So this is the thing. You look at Harry now. I've heard sources have told me and out there that he's been trying to look for more maybe speaking engagements on that sort of things, maybe doing corporate speaking sort of stuff. That's what he might be looking to do. But that's the thing, when it comes to his career, and aside from the stuff which he's been publicly doing with Meghan, God bless Meghan. At least she's got her own solo ventures. Harry, it doesn't appear that he's got that. His last big solo venture was Spare, and well, we know how that went down. Massive pay packet, but reputational. So you've got to look at
Okay.
it.
Well, let's talk about the court case last week. Of course, Prince Harry gave evidence last week in his high-profile case accusing Associated Newspapers Limited, A&L, publisher of Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday, of unlawfully gathering information relating to their private lives, and a claim, of course, that the publisher denies. Josh, you were inside the courtroom when Harry became emotional. Can you take us inside? What was that like?
Yes, I didn't actually realize how softly spoken Harry was. At times, all of us in the public gallery, all the journalists, reporters there, actually at times struggled to hear Prince Harry at times because he was speaking quite quietly and the microphones weren't necessarily the best. But yes, what I would say is my first assessment of it, he was very much angry, very much frustrated. The judge intervened 3 times during his testimony, the judge saying a number of times and the judge was trying to be quite nice to Harry. The judge said, I see this on the stand all the time. Witnesses feel like they have to make a point or argue or whatever. You do not have to do that. Please just answer the questions, because Harry was trying to make these big points about how it affected his life, and he was trying to almost argue against the barrister from Associated Newspapers when putting a question to him. At times, Harry was like, "Well, I dispute the facts of this question." I was trying to almost argue back against the barrister. So he appeared very much frustrated, very much angry. But the testimony was contradictory, because on one hand, he was saying how oh, it's not possible. My inner circle wouldn't leak to the press. They know journalists. They know who's who. They wouldn't leak. But then on the other hand, he was also saying things of, well, my circle of trust and my circle of knowledge was decreasing. And if I did get suspicious, I would cut people off. So the testimony at times appeared quite contradictory in that way. When he got emotional, that was very much towards the end of the testimony, because these are historic allegations going back to the late 90s to the early 2010s with some of these articles. So he didn't have to mention Meghan. Meghan actually had zero any relevance to this case whatsoever. All of these articles that he was accusing the Mail Group of unlawful information gathering did not relate to Meghan whatsoever. And he said at the end, with a cracked voice, holding back tears, saying, they've, as I said before, they've made my wife's life an absolutely miserable, was the quote. And again, this was kind of, I don't want to say his crusade. Well, I think I did earlier in the program, but he was very much kind of hammering home the point of a dislike of the press, of the tabloid press, going on and on and on, again with this contradictory information. But there was one point as well which was very interesting, because there was one article that the Mail printed about a rumoured love interest, the TV presenter in the UK called Natalie Pinkham. And Prince Harry said Natalie Pinkham has not been and never has been a source, even though her words were actually directly attributed in that article. So the judge actually had to tell Harry what a source in journalism was it's not just people behind the scenes necessarily leaking information. You know, if a journalist phones up a person and asks for a quote and they give a quote, that is effectively a source, something which Prince Harry might not have necessarily have been aware of, it seems to be. So it was absolutely riveting testimony. I would say definitely dramatic, definitely contradictory. He only really got properly emotional when speaking about Meghan right at the end. But there was quite a lot of revelation. So he didn't deny using a social media platform, Facebook. However, he did deny using the name Mr. Mischief, which was quite entertaining in the courtroom. And at the beginning, there was a bit of a hoo-ha, a bit of confusion over how he was going to be referred to, whether they refer to him as His Royal Highness. Of course, that HRH title should remain inactive as he's not a working member of the royal family. So that was the kind of deal that was struck with Her Late Majesty the Queen. So it was very interesting, very riveting, very much Harry on his campaign against the tabloid press, using the buzzwords. He wasn't afraid to use the buzzwords, and I quote, I just want responsibility and accountability. That's what he was saying. But then, of course, the British tabloid press, we can go on and on, but of course, they are regulated by the Independent Press Standards Organisation. There is the Ipso Editors Code, where they don't print certain things. They're not allowed to print certain things and risk fines if they do. And obviously, the News of the World newspaper was shut down back in the day as well. So the press is in a different place now. There is responsibility. There is accountability. And Prince Harry, of course, not necessarily knowing all the facts, or at least not wanting to present all the facts. And I think to a certain extent, not wanting to accept the fact that the associated newspapers would never reveal their sources, and no journalist would ever reveal their sources. But it was very, very clear, at least from the articles, that at least with some of them, and at least this is what the Associated newspaper lawyer and barrister tried to present in the case, which actually, there were probably leaks in his inner circle, something in which he probably just, or at least from the testimony, it seems that he just didn't want to accept.